Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki,
Jai.
Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Gaur Premanandi, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Krsnadas Kaviraja Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanami, Namaste Saraswati Devi, Gaur Managerial, Nirvasesha Sunyavadi Vastet, today's Saturday. So today, we're going to read a verse that Srila Prabhupada spoke about often and quoted often. Interesting. I thought it was the right verse. It turns out that it's not. Hang on 1 second. Maybe I should have gone with that verse, where Krishna had me open the page. Okay, many of you may know this verse. Manushyanam, this is chapter 7, text number 3. This chapter is entitled Knowledge of the Absolute. Manushyanam sahasreshu Kaschid yatati siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam Kaschid mam veti tattvataha Manushyanam of men Sahasreshu out of many thousands Kaschid someone yatati endeavors siddhaye for perfection yatatam of those so endeavoring api indeed siddhanam of those who have achieved perfection kaschit someone mam me veti does know tattvataha in fact. Actually, I should have really said tattvata. When it's at the end of the verse, at the end of a line of the Sanskrit, so the Sanskrit actually is 2 lines in this verse. So if there was a word at the end of this line that had the AH with the dot under it, that's when you say aha. And you don't say it after any of the times that it appears before that. And so the very last word, in order to keep the meter properly, you do the double aha. So you, instead of tattvata, you do tattvataha. And so when you're actually saying it in the word for word, the only reason you're saying the aha is to maintain the meter. So you don't need to, if you see a word in the word for word translation that has the AH after it, you don't have to go aha, because that's not how that's pronounced. It's just tattvata. But to keep the meter, there's the tattvataha at the end. Out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. Purport. There are various grades of men, and out of many thousands, one may be sufficiently interested in transcendental realization to try to know what is the self, what is the body, and what is the absolute truth. Generally, mankind is simply engaged in the animal propensities, namely eating, sleeping, defending, and mating. And hardly anyone is interested in transcendental knowledge. The first 6 chapters of the Gita are meant for those who are interested in transcendental knowledge, in understanding the self, the super self, and the process of realization by jnana yoga, dhyana yoga, and discrimination of the self from matter. However, Krishna can be known only by persons who are in Krishna consciousness. Other transcendentalists may achieve impersonal Brahman realization, for this is easier than understanding Krishna. Krishna is the Supreme Person, but at the same time, he is beyond the knowledge of Brahman and Paramatma. The yogis and jnanis are confused in their attempts to understand Krishna. Although the greatest of the impersonalists, Sripad Shankaracharya, has admitted in his Gita commentary that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his followers do not accept Krishna as such, for it is very difficult to know Krishna, even though one has transcendental realization of impersonal Brahman. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the cause of all causes, the primeval Lord Govinda. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchit Ananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarvakarna Karana. It is very difficult for the non-devotees to know him. Although non-devotees declare that the path of bhakti or devotional service is very easy, they cannot practice it. If the path of bhakti is so easy, as the non-devotee class of men proclaim, then why do they take up the difficult path? Actually, the path of bhakti is not easy. The so-called path of bhakti practiced by unauthorized persons without knowledge of bhakti may be easy, but when it is practiced factually according to the rules and regulations, the speculative scholars and philosophers fall away from the path. Srila Rupa Goswami writes in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, first part, second chapter, 101st verse, Shuddhi Smriti Pranadi Pancharatra Veding Vina Akantiki Hare Bhaktir Upajayai Vakalpate. Devotional service of the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic literatures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Narada Pancharatra is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. It is not possible for the Brahman realized impersonalist or the Paramatma realized yogi to understand Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the son of Mother Jasoda or the charioteer of Arjuna. Even the great demigods are sometimes confused about Krishna. Uyanti Suraya, Mang Tuveda Nakaschana. No one knows me as I am, the Lord says, and if one does know him, then Samahatma Sudur Lavaha. Such a great soul is very rare. Therefore, unless one practices devotional service to the Lord, one cannot know Krishna as he is, tatvata, even though one is a great scholar or philosopher. Only the pure devotees can know something of the inconceivable, transcendental qualities in Krishna, his being the cause of all causes, his omnipotence and opulence, and his wealth, fame, strength, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, because Krishna is benevolently inclined to his devotees. He is the last word in Brahman realization, and the devotees alone can realize him as he is. Therefore, it is said, Atak Shri Krishna Namani Nabhavet Grahyam Indriyai Sevan Mukehi Jivadao Svayameva Spuratyara. No one can understand Krishna as he is by the blunt material senses, but he reveals himself to the devotees, being pleased with them for their transcendental loving service to him. From the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, first part, second chapter, 234th verse. Om Jnana Timanandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namah Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Dena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamam Shri Guru Vaishnavanscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Harijanam Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha Hare Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishamanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. By your blessings and by the blessings of Srila Prabhupada, may I say something here today that will help you realize Krishna. So how many people have listened to a lecture of Srila Prabhupada where Prabhupada says, the path of bhakti is easy? Yeah, Prabhupada actually says that quite a few times. Yet in this purport, Prabhupada's actually talking about the path of bhakti being somewhat difficult. And it really depends on the depth to which one takes their bhakti as to whether it is easy or difficult. So to begin the path of bhakti is very easy, right? If we just chant Hare Krishna, we're already hearing and chanting, we're already doing two of the 9 processes of devotional service, so therefore we're engaged in bhakti. And that's the easiest thing in the world, right? Just hearing and chanting. So it's a very, very simple thing. But as we advance in our Krishna consciousness, we realize that actually there's a little bit more than just chanting, hearing the chanting and chanting Hare Krishna. We actually have to come to that point of full surrender. And that's why the verse, Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekam Sharanam Braja Aham Tvam Sarvapapebhyo Mokshayashyami Ma Sukchaha, is right at the end of the Bhagavad Gita. Because if it was at the beginning, if Krishna just told Arjuna, just surrender unto me and I'll deliver you from all sinful reactions, do not fear, and just told Arjuna to go into the battle, he wouldn't have explained, for our benefit, the whole Bhagavad Gita. And Arjuna himself may not have realized the whole process, all the different processes of yoga, and culminating in the process of bhakti yoga, and culminating the process of bhakti yoga, culminating in full surrender to Krishna. So this particular verse points out that out of many thousands among men, one may endeavor for perfection. And of those who have achieved perfection, hardly one knows me in truth. So how many here want to know Krishna in truth? Yeah, I do. Hope everybody does. That's why we're here today. And so there are certain things on the path of bhakti that will help us come to that point of knowing Krishna in truth. And there are certain things that we can do along the way that might bring us to not knowing Krishna in truth. In other words, you can optimize your chances of knowing Krishna in truth by doing certain things that are given in the scriptures, or there's things that we can do that everyday people do that'll get in our way. So who knows some of the things, let's go with the positives first. Who knows some of the things that are very positive that we can do for optimizing our chances of knowing Krishna in truth? Anybody? Come on, somebody's got to know something. You know, what is it that you can do to optimize your chances of knowing Krishna in truth? Yes?
Chanting the holy name.
Chanting the holy name, definitely, yeah.
Reading the Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam.
Yeah, reading Srimad Bhagavatam and the Gita. And does anybody know of any particular things that Rupa Goswami talks about?
Enthusiasm? Enthusiastic.
Yes, that's the first one that he talks about in the positive. Utsahan, enthusiasm. One must be very enthusiastic in their devotional service. Does anybody know the next one?
Patience.
Association.
Yes, patience.
Association.
Actually, enthusiastic devotional service, yeah, patience. And then the third one?
Association. Association.
Determination.
The third one is determination. One must be very determined. Darya. And the fourth one?
Adherence to the devotional principles.
Yeah, following the scripture, following the scriptural utsannisya darya tat karma pravartanat. Tat karma pravartanat. Let me just, excuse me for a second, I am just going to find that verse just so that we get it absolutely correct from Rupa Goswami's myth. So there are 6 principles favorable to the execution of pure devotional service. So we've got being enthusiastic, 2, endeavoring with confidence. So actually we kind of got that a little differently, but 3 is being patient. 4 is acting according to the regulative principles such as Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, hearing, chanting, and remembering Krishna. Number 5, Sangha Tyagat Satorvate. Does anybody know what Tyaga means?
To reject.
Reject, exactly. So Sangha Tyagat Satorvate. So abandoning the association of non-devotees. And that doesn't mean that, you know, when you go to work, you just sit there and you don't talk to anybody, you know, unless it's about work only. No. You talk to your, co-workers and you can, even a lot of them will be talking about the news and stuff like that. And you can talk about things like that, but every once in a while, and it doesn't have to be even every day, but every once in a while, just interject a little transcendental philosophy. Just like, nowadays everybody's talking about the Olympics and everything, right? And it's all based on bodily conception, right? That I'm from Canada, I'm from the US, I'm from Africa, some country in Africa, and I'm from India, and I'm competing. And but we're all here to try to do it together. But and it's supposed to be a formula for hopefully increasing peace in the world. But how many think that after the Olympics there will be more peace in the world? Right? Not likely. And so that bodily conception of life still goes on, even though they're sort of trying to transcend it. But the problem is that they don't have that transcendental knowledge. So when you're talking to your co-workers, it's a good idea to maybe say to them, you know what? Yeah, it's really great that everybody comes together and tries to, something along these lines. You don't have to say it just like this, but something along these lines that, if everybody just realized that we're actually spirit, and in that way we're all equal. I mean, bodily, yeah, we're different. Somebody can swim faster, somebody can do this, somebody may be born in Africa and have a blackish body and, brownish body here and yellow body there and white body here and red body there. There's all these different bodies. But actually, what is it, the essential? Where does the consciousness come from? It comes from spirit. So if we give them that little bit of understanding, then it'll help, right, to bring them to that point of seeing beyond the bodily platform. And that is actually, as Prabhupada says in a number of places, a formula for peace. But ultimately we're not really concerned about whether there's peace or happiness in the material world. We're just interested in getting back to the spiritual world. So we'll get back to now, understanding what it is. So, and we'll finish with these positives. So the last one was number 5, abandoning the association of non-devotees. And number 6 is satavrite. And that's sata is translated as of the great previous acharyas, and rite by following in the footsteps. So following in the footsteps of the previous acharyas. So these are the ways in which we can, these 6 principles are the ways that we can increase our chances to be one of those, out of many thousands among men, one endeavors for perfection, and in many thousands of those, one can know me in truth. So 1,000 thousands is 1,000,000, but Prabhupada, in this verse, it actually says out of thousands, and then out of thousands again, so it's actually out of perhaps even billions of souls that one endeavors for perfection. And out of all of those, only one knows me in truth. So we really want to try to increase our chances, right? It's just like people who gamble, they try to increase their chances in every way, but you always lose. The house has got the odds in their favor, and you'll always end up losing. But with Krishna, if we actually follow these principles, and so far, these positive ones are actually fairly easy, right? I mean, enthusiasm, right? We can be enthusiastic about devotional service. When we come here and chant and dance and sing about Krishna, and we take wonderful prasadam and we get to see the beautiful deities, and we hear, the wonderful words of Bhagavad Gita and all about how wonderful Krishna is. I mean, that's just great. I mean, it's easy to be enthusiastic about that. And to have, confidence in that we are following the right path. Again, we have all this transcendental knowledge and all the words of Srila Prabhupada, where he just says over and over again in so many different ways that you can have confidence in this path, because there is no other philosophy and there is no other activity than devotional service that can take you back home, back to Godhead. So be confident in it. Don't, a lot of times when we do talk to people about Krishna consciousness, and it's understandable. We are all neophytes in devotional service as compared to Srila Prabhupada. And so sometimes when we talk to people, we're a little timid about how we present Krishna consciousness. But at the same time, we can actually be very confident. And we should try to make sure that the people get an understanding of our confidence. And I myself, when I first met devotees and they spoke to me about Krishna, I was impressed by their confidence in this process, because they knew that this is the way that they're going to get out of the material world forever. And Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevalam, Kalo, Nasteva, 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 Gatiranyata. In this age of Kali, there is no other way, no other way, no other way than chanting the holy name. And so that just, gives us the confidence that, we've got to try to help people come to that understanding so that they can also become fearless, right? I mean, everybody in the material world has fear about whether they're going to get a job or not have a job, or have enough money or not have enough money. There's always this fear going on, or whether, there's going to be terrorists happening. I mean, just, this week in Scarborough, father and son got arrested for, plotting a terrorist attack, so there's always fear in the material world. And we're just kind of like, when you look at some of the animals, like even the birds, sometimes you're looking at the birds and they're eating something on the ground, but they're always going, and then they'll take a peck and like that, they're always looking, where's the cat, where's the cat? Or even if you've ever seen geese with goslings, the little geese, you can see that there's one of the adults will be eating with the goslings, but the other one will kind of sit back and just, he's just the watching, or he or she, because they take turns, and they're just watching constantly, and if something comes along, like even if it's somebody on a bicycle, the geese, they put up their wings and they go chasing after the person on the bike, and I mean geese can actually do a number on you, so don't ever get near geese and goslings, because you can end up getting bit pretty hard. They can have a pretty hard bite. So, and in this way, there's just fear in the material world, and everybody's living in this fear. But if we give them the confidence of devotional service, how to be very confident that I am going to become fearless, that I'm going to realize my spiritual, eternal nature. And then I don't have to worry about the material body. It can get bit, it can get cut up, it can die. It doesn't matter, right? And so we've got to come to that point where it really doesn't matter anymore. The material body and how we're coping with it and taking care of it and everything, that doesn't matter. Krishna will take care of that. And sometimes, Krishna took care of Srila Prabhupada in so many ways. I mean, Prabhupada came on the Jaladuta. And one might think, Prabhupada had 2 heart attacks on the Jaladuta. And then he even had a heart attack later on when he was in New York. And, one may be thinking, well, if Krishna's protecting Srila Prabhupada, why did he have these heart attacks? It's the material body. And even Srila Prabhupada utilized his body completely spiritually, so it was spiritualized, but at the same time, it is actually part of the material nature. And so it is subject to these shortcomings. And so the material body, and Krishna gives those things, and just like in this very similar way that the Pandavas were meant to rule Bharatvarsha, which at that time was the entire planet. And Maharaj Yudhisthira was meant to be the king. He was the oldest son of Maharaj Pandu. And yet, what happened? So many things got in between them and being the rulers. Duryodhan and his cohorts, they just tried to do everything they could to make sure that the Pandavas didn't end up taking the throne. And so Duryodhan was functioning in that fear, right? Because he was thinking, well, Maharaj Pandu died and everything, and that should have been the end of that reign of kings. And so my father, Dhritarashtra, now becomes the inheritance of the kingdom, and I should now be the one that takes over the entire thing. And Duryodhan hated Krishna. He really had a hate on for Krishna. He loved Balaram, like he was friends with Balaram, but he hated Krishna, which is really interesting because when you think about it, when Prabhupada was asked what's the difference between Krishna and Balaram, Prabhupada said, Krishna is black and Balaram is white. That's the only difference. And so, Duryodhan is one of those special characters engaged by Krishna in this mood of anger towards Krishna and everything. It's like his rasa, that chivalry rasa. And so he has this whole thing going on in this fear that he's not going to be able to, be the king, the next king. But Krishna understood that actually, if, as stated in the purport here, Prabhupada talks, Ishvara Parama Krishna. So Krishna is Anadir Adir Govinda. He is the source. Anadir, he is without beginning, and Adir, he is the source of all incarnations. So even though Balaram is white, and what's the difference? Krishna is black, Balaram is white, There is actually a difference in the sense that Krishna is the source of all incarnations. So, although you can't really say that at any time there was, because there is no time in the spiritual sky, so you can't actually say that Balaram, there was a time when there was no Balaram and then Krishna manifested Balaram. Krishna has never been by himself, as he says also in the Bhagavad Gita, Natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme jnadipa nachayavana bhavishama sarve vayam atakparam. Never was there a time that I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. So he's saying this to Arjuna. So Arjuna's, all the kings and everybody, all the jivas that are there on the battle of Kurukshetra and on the planet and in the universe and in the ultimate millions of universes and in the spiritual sky, all of them have been coexisting for eternity. Now, a lot of times we think of eternity as being the eternal passing of time. But actually eternity, as it's stated in the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, eternity is the absence of time. So when we come into the material world, we come under the influence of time. And we are completely thinking that everything has a past, present, and future, and a beginning and an end. But in the spiritual sky, that is not the case. Everything has been constantly existing without the influence of time. And yet there are past times going on in the spiritual sky, So it's a little hard for us to understand because we are completely under the influence of time, and the spiritual world is not. So we can actually help everybody with our confidence in devotional service to begin to understand that they are eternal, that they are actually outside of the influence of time. Because how does Krishna describe himself in the Bhagavad Gita when he says, I am time, destroyer of worlds, destroyer of everything. But in the spiritual sky, and Krishna goes on in the Bhagavad Gita to say, except the spiritual can never be destroyed. Hanyamane Sharire, it can never be destroyed. Nahanyate Hanyamane Sharire. So in this way, Krishna, Prabhupada has that supreme confidence, and the way he spoke has inspired so many of his disciples, who then inspired others' disciples, and all of us should have that kind of confidence that we can go out there and we can actually, in the mood of assisting others to have that same confidence that I am a spirit soul and I can go confidently, I can walk confidently through the material world because I'm not worried. I'm really not worried about what's going to happen next. Whereas everybody in the material world is always worried about what's going to happen next. So in this way, and we can have this confidence. So having confidence is one of the things that increases our chances of being one of those who gets to know Krishna in truth. So there are, Rupa Goswami talks about in the Nectar of Instruction, there are also 6 things which reduce our chances of being one of those who knows Krishna in truth. Does anybody want to hazard does anybody remember? I'll read the Sanskrit and it might give you a clue. It probably will give you a clue. Dadati pratigrinnati guyam akyati prichati vumte vojayate chaiva sadvidam pritilakshanam. So dadati, what does anybody know the meaning of the word dadati?
Over endeavor? Over endeavor?
No. Give. Yeah. It's probably is it similar in Hindi? Yeah. So dadati means to give. So giving in charity. Oh, sorry, I went went the wrong way. But those are the 6 principles of love shared by one devotee and another. Sorry, my mistake. It's the previous verse to the one that we just went over. Atyahara prayashascha prajalpo niyamagraha janasangas chalo yamcha sadvir bhaktir vinasyati. So ati ahara. Does anybody know the meaning of overeating? Exactly. Overeating or too much collecting. Prayasha. Over endeavoring, right? So these are things like if we're overeating, we're too concerned about the body, right? We're trying to enjoy the senses, and enjoying the senses really just keeps us in this bodily conception of life. And so we have to kind of give up that bodily conception of life. So we have to kind of watch how we're eating. And over endeavoring, it's just if we're really trying to achieve something and we're working hard for it, but it has nothing to do with Krishna, then it really is just a waste of time, right? Like in the material world, so many people over endeavor at work or at sports like the Olympics or at things like that. They're just doing over, working so hard, and they're not realizing that actually all of this, even if they achieve anything from their endeavor, what happens to them? They grow old, they die, and it all disappears. Especially the athletes. By the time they're 40 years old, most of them, they're pretty washed up. And even if it's not 40 years old, at some point, they're gonna get old, so old that it just disappears. Like, I think they have something about the horse riding in the Olympics. Those athletes, they call them athletes who ride the horses, are 61 years old. Some of them are even getting up into their 70s, but even after about 70 years old, they can't do it anymore. So it's time bound, and it disappears. So what's the use of your over endeavoring if you're going to lose it all? Right? No point. And it's just wasting time that could be time used in developing love for Krishna, hearing all about Krishna and chanting about Krishna and hearing all about his wonderful glories and pastimes. So, this is one that I think every devotee knows, Prajalpa. I'm sure almost everybody here has, been engaged in some kind of useless talk, and another devotee comes along and says, "No Prajalpa, Prabhu." In the early days of ISKCON, that would happen a lot. You'd start talking about something in the material world, and somebody would say, "No Prajalpa." Because again, it's just wasting time when we should be just hearing and chanting about Krishna. And niyama, rules and regulations. Agraha. So too much attachment to. It's interesting. Because the two words niyamagraha, they go together. I think in Sanskrit it's called a sandhya, when two words go together, right? And so the A of agraha can either be long or short. And in both instances, it changes the meaning slightly of the word. That agraha can either be too much attachment to, or it can actually be so practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement. That's how it's described by Srila Prabhupada, as translated by Srila Prabhupada in the verse. Or rejecting the rules and regulations. So agraha can be too much attached to the rules and regulations. Agraha, the long A, and agraha can mean rejecting the rules and regulations of the scriptures and working independently or whimsically. So agraha and agraha are two opposite words, you know, and it's really just depends on whether it's a long A or a short A, but they both are actually part of the number 4 of this verse, which is things that you can do that actually can make you diminish your chances of being one who comes to know Krishna. What would be an example of somebody who is practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement? Now, I don't want to say, oh, I know this devotee who's so-and-so. I don't want anybody to get personal like that, but just, you know, a general example of, you know, what is practicing the scriptural rules and regulations only for the sake of following them and not for the sake of spiritual advancement.
Chanting 16 rounds can be mechanical. Just because I promised to my spiritual master I have to chant, not I love to chant. So it's kind of a mechanical chanting, following for the sake of following.
Yes, that's a very good example, wonderful example. Yeah. Anybody else? You know, sometimes also there's that higher principle, lower principle kind of thing. And Srila Prabhupada, you know, one of our principles is that we don't eat any onions or garlic, right? And I don't know how many of you have read the Lilamrita, but one time Srila Prabhupada was, I believe, in Fiji. And they had just arrived on the airplane, and they'd been taken to somebody's house, and they sat down for a meal after they arrived, and this person had worked very hard cooking for them. And one of the devotees started eating, and they noticed, oh, there's garlic in there. And the devotee was sitting right beside Srila Prabhupada, and they went, Srila Prabhupada, there's garlic. And Prabhupada said, just eat. Because the higher principle is, when you're a guest in somebody's house, you should accept their. Now, you would not accept meat under the same higher principle, lower principle thing. But garlic is a plant. You're not, you know, going against, you know, the no meat eating principle, the 4 regulative principles. But it is a plant that actually increases the Rajagun and Tamagun within us, and especially the Tamagun, actually. And so we avoid those things. It's just like, actually a lot of times we notice that some cooks tend to cook very hot, spicy things. And that's actually Rajagun. And Rajagun, we actually, in the process of devotional service, we're actually trying to get to the Sattvagun, to the platform of goodness, and then we can actually, from there, we can come to the platform of Shuddha Sattva, pure goodness. But we can't get there if we're still on the Rajaguna platform. And eating really spicy food is on the Rajaguna platform. Now, Srila Prabhupada did say that actually you can have some things, some preparations are meant to be spicy. But it shouldn't be that every sabji, you know, is spicy. And I can remember one time even at the Rath Yatra in Toronto, they put black pepper in the salad. You know, and salad is supposed to be refreshing and light and cooling. And then they had all this black pepper, this hot black pepper. And it was just like people were getting plates of it, and then they were throwing it away because nobody wanted to eat salad with pepper on it. At least maybe, there may have been some people who ate it, but most of the people were throwing it away. So we have to try to, if you do want, Prabhupada said that you can make chutney. Chutney, and Prabhupada did say, chutney should be so hot you can't eat it, but so sweet you can't resist it. And the devotees, Prabhupada showed them how to make apple chutney. You know, there's many different fruits that you can, we used to make strawberry chutney, cranberry chutney, you know, blueberry chutney. You know, there's so many different kinds of chutneys you can make. And but they should have, they can have a lot of cayenne, but they can also have a lot of sugar. And so one should actually, but have it on the side, so that somebody who doesn't want to have anything hot, they can eat the rest, and then those who do want it hot can. And the sweetness, because it's described in the Bhagavad Gita that foods that are in the mode of goodness are very sweet and life-giving. So a chutney is very sweet and life-giving, but the hotness can still be there, but its effect is overpowered by the sweetness. So that's why it should be simultaneously hot and sweet. And so I'm sure we could all think of examples of how we can reject the rules and regulations of the scriptures and work independently or whimsically. I mean, basically that's what the whole material world is doing. And loyam is one of the words in this, and it's ardent longing or greed. Now, has anybody ever heard, in fact, I think even the last time I might have been here, I might have even said the word loyam and talked about how one should be having this ardent longing for Krishna. But here, this loyam is something that will get in the way of one's devotional service and diminish their chances of knowing Krishna in truth. And that loyam is greed, ardent longing and greed for material things, right? So if we really have a lot of greed for material things, and just because somebody does end up with, living in a nice house and has a nice car and everything else, doesn't mean that they're necessarily any more greedy or less greedy than anybody else. What really matters is, are they utilizing that facility in Krishna's service? So if we do end up with a lot of material facility, if we do get a lot of material wealth or whatever, if we utilize that in Krishna's service, then there's no problem. Krishna could provide unlimited wealth. But if we're thinking, I've got to utilize this for myself, then more than likely you may end up with wealth for a while, but then it will be taken away by death. I mean, ultimately, even for devotees, any wealth will be taken away by death. But this wealth can be an impetus to help us in devotional service, or it can be an obstacle to our devotional service. And we just have to choose, what is it going to be? Am I going to make it an obstacle, or am I going to make it an impediment? An encouragement in my devotional service. So that's something that we have to think about all the time. And then, so those are the three things, the 6 things that can destroy our devotional service. And Bhaktyamam Abhijanati, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that it is only by devotional service that one can know me as I am. So we want to really make sure that we avoid all these things that can destroy our devotional service and do all the things that will help us in our devotional service. And then, of course, we didn't even get to the 10 offenses against the holy name. We have to be very careful of those as well. But that can maybe be time for another class. Does anybody have any questions, comments, realizations? Nothing? Now's the time. I guess now's not the time. Now's the time for arti. Or is it?
Yes.
Is it? Oh, we go by,
This one is
okay.
saying 12.
Yeah, that clock's a little off. Okay. Otherwise, I would have stopped maybe a few minutes earlier. Okay, let's have arti.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Srila Prabhupada.
One Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare
Srila Prabhupada ki
Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parabhakacharya Astadasa Shushma Abhayacharya Bhakti Vedanta Swami Shri Prabhupada ki Jayam Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parabhakacharya Astadasa Shushma Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Jigandi Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki Ananda Koti Vaishnavrinda ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Prem Shri Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Radha Nagiri Govardhan ki Vrindavan Dham ki Nagari Mayapur Dham ki Gangamai ki Jamunamai ki Bhakti Devi ki Srimati Tulsi Devi ki Harinam Sankirtan ki Transcendental Book Distribution ki Srila Prabhupada ki Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki Gaur Premanandi ki All glories to the assembled of Lord. All glories to the assembled of Lord. All glories to the assembled of Lord. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Namaste Narasingaya.
Namaste Narasingaya.
Prahlada Lada Dayane. Hiranyakashipur Bhakshaha.
Lakshmi Sringadev ki, Raj Maharaj ki, Srila